emergency, and the water just keeps on coming. The CBC's Loretta Redicop has the latest on the ground.
That is a waterfall behind me, so the water is always rushing here, but with nothing close to this type of force or that kind of volume. For example, right here behind me, that's normally a parking lot. The mayor of Bracebridge says 1,000 permanent homes and another 1,000 cottages are affected, and several roads in the area are closed. Graydon Smith says that people without enough supplies or people with health concerns should consider a voluntary evacuation. He's asking cottagers to stay away so that they can focus on permanent residents. Among them are this family. They're busy trying to save their waterfront home. Two sisters live here with their 96-year-old mother. They've been here for 60 years, and they say they've never seen anything like this. One of the sisters first saw a bit of water last night.
I thought it was my dog having a little accident, and then I opened the door and realized that's no accident.
We've always been fine. Dad knew what he was doing and never expected ever to see this much water in the ground.
Their mother still hasn't seen the mess. They want to clean up so that they can turn the heat back on for her.
Oh, I've been frightened to death. I was in my bed sleeping, and when I realized water was outside, I thought, am I going to get through the night here, or am I going to have to leave my home?
The one piece of good news here is that according to the town of Bracebridge, the water level is no longer rising north of here in Huntsville. That's also upstream, so that means that the crest will come here soon as well. But they do expect the water level to continue to rise here for another 2 to 3 days. Loretta Redicop, CBC News, Bracebridge, Ontario.
And members of the armed forces are expected there tomorrow afternoon to help with the situation and to help with the sandbags and assist with evacuations if needed. But today, floodwaters are also ravaging the Ottawa region. A rainfall warning has been lifted, but the risk is still very present. CBC's Olivia Stefanovic is in Constance Bay with more.
Water continues to rise in Constance Bay. Take a look at this road. There is water all along this stretch here. The homes look like islands in the middle of the Ottawa River, which is overflowing. And as you can see, homeowners are desperately trying to save their property with sandbags, putting layer upon layer. You can see some are piling up sandbags into their boats, trying to get them to other locations where water is surrounding them. Some people have already lost their homes to this flood, but others are still in the fight.
Well, it's pretty devastating, but I think we're in good shape, and like at the moment, other people around us are way worse off than we are. So I'm quite grateful for the help that we've received, and moving forward, I think we're going to be okay. But there's a lot of devastation around the corner from me, so you know, it's traumatic.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his two sons visited Constance Bay. They met with volunteers and residents and were briefed on the worst hit areas of flooding here. They also lent a hand with sandbagging. They filled bags with sand to help residents out, but not everyone was happy to see them.
I'm glad to be here with my kids. We just filled sandbags for 15 minutes.
But you held people up.
Sorry.
All your RCMP and security held people up from getting their stuff.
I understand your frustration around security. I live frustrations with security every day of my life right now. That's something that unfortunately is a reality of my life.
But look at the time you've taken.
I'm happy to be here.
They're about to open these dams.
Okay, go.
In response, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also said that he's here to help encourage Canadians to come out to help with the relief effort. Even though there are many volunteers in this area, hundreds more are needed. The Canadian Armed Forces troops are here, about 400 of them, and they are helping with the sandbagging effort as well as going door to door to visit residents. They're checking on them to make sure everything's okay and to inform them of the risks if they decide to stay. And that's because water levels are expected to continue to rise here, and that could cause roads to be washed out and electricity to be cut. And how much is the water expected to rise? Well, officials are saying it could be about half a meter more just in this area. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
And we've got comprehensive coverage for you on the flood-affected areas in and around Ottawa. You can find it at cbc.ca/Ottawa. Flood problems also persist in New Brunswick. Officials there say water levels are expected to fluctuate in waterfront communities. About 1,000 people have been forced from their homes and have registered with the Red Cross. Many roads are still flooded across the province, and part of the Trans-Canada Highway is closed. Officials say the waters should start to recede soon, but only gradually over the next several days. And Quebec's battle against surging floodwaters is facing a daunting obstacle. More rain is pouring in many parts of the province. 75 homes have flooded in the city of Montreal. Across the province, more than 3,000, nearly 2,000 residents have been forced to flee. And now the Galipo Bridge, a key transportation link into and out of Montreal, has been closed. Here in Toronto, we are seeing some rainfall, but despite the extra moisture, the city is still clear. But as Natalie Nanowski reports, the Navy is ready if that changes.
On a day like today, the way that they're dressed, it's about 90 minutes for them to suffer from any hypothermia. If they're in, let's say, shorts and a t-shirt, it's about 20 minutes. Every scenario is obviously going to be different. When we're providing a flood response overall, we've got first aid, of course, that we're applying. We've got generators, sandbags that we could provide to some of the folks. Certainly 2 years ago, that's what we were doing here with respect to Toronto Island.
There's no risk to the island right now, but the Navy has already sent 70 sailors to help with the situation in Quebec. And with flooding happening in 4 provinces, they're going to be sending a lot more.
We are on 12 hours notice to move right now. I have 60 sailors right now that are on standby and ready to go.
There's a ton of zippers. There's a fly zipper. There's a zipper on the chest that we have to get done up and make sure it's super proper, because if you jump in the water and that's not done up, you're getting drenched.
And that's what today at HMSC York is for, practice along Lake Ontario, where the water temperature is about 1 degree.
Because it's always good to have practice go look for doing searches, because if you're not up on all the time, you lose it.
Sailors got their diving gear ready, jumped on a boat, and acted out a water rescue. In all, 120 took part in the exercise, many leaving for flooded areas of the country right after they dried off. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
So the weather is still very much a concern in so many of the regions. Watching us, Sophia, what do you have?
You know what? It wasn't a typical freeze and thaw cycle this past spring. We had a lot of swings in temperatures. And right now, the situation is really being exacerbated. Plus, some of the areas of concern that we've seen over the last few minutes over the show were really hit hard again by the rain that we had yesterday. So yes, it will take a few days for that crest to be maintained. And there is still quite a bit of a snowpack to be melted. States of emergencies, 9 in total, from Bracebridge all the way to Montreal, 8 in Ontario. You can expect that situation to continue at least for the coming days in many of those regions. We also had a pretty large snowpack in central Ontario and in the Laurentian Mountains in Quebec. All of that does take some time to drain. Now, a bit of the positive news here is that we aren't seeing above seasonal temperatures for the next few days, so it's kind of chilly below seasonal. But this is going to slow down that snowpack melt just a little bit. Adding to problems around the Ottawa River is the fact that the flooding in the Montreal and Eastern Township area has been bad for about a week. It's backing things up for all the areas up to Mattawa. So we'll keep talking about that. We'll talk about how this year's flooding outlook looks to be record-breaking once again, just like the year in Lake Ontario where we had all the flooding on Toronto Island. So we'll talk about that and the possibility of snow for around the GTA tonight.
Okay, well, we'll check with you in a bit. Thanks, Sophia.
Sounds good.
Well, a few snowflakes and windy conditions this morning didn't stop about 1,000 people from picking up trash in the Don Valley earlier today. The event was put on by a group of community organizations focused on keeping Toronto litter-free. As Hawea Fadal reports, one of the biggest problems, plastic bags.
Like a little pick, and I got tongs, and those really help to sort of grab these little bits really quickly.
This volunteer brought her own tools to get rid of the garbage in the Don Valley.
This I use to pick up like little microplastics and pieces like that.
The cleanup was organized by Don't Mess with the Don, a group concerned about the dumping of garbage in the Don Valley. Volunteers were expected to fill about 3,000 bags worth of garbage today alone. But one of the biggest challenges was removing plastic bags from the soil.
I'll take this and start digging. But you'll see, once you start digging, there's just so much more under there. So I've got this bag out.
Teams of volunteers are focusing on 12 ravines here in the Don Valley. As you can see behind me, they're taking bags and collecting garbage as far up as the main road. Each team had a leader keeping track of numbers and ensuring everybody was safe. This team leader says it's about taking ownership of our communities.
It's my valley, it's my responsibility. People have to be more responsible for their own environment.
The event is happening as part of the city's annual spring cleanup, but organizers say the Don Valley has been neglected by the city and people are noticing.
I think the people are fed up with the garbage situation in the city. It's not just the ravines, it's everywhere.
I think I cleaned this area.
Vandertop says educating the public is the first step to reducing litter.
It really starts with community engagement, caring for your environment, and being a responsible individual.
The Ontario Environment Minister was invited but could not attend due to prior commitments. A spokesperson for the minister says they will be announcing a provincial anti-litter day that will happen in the fall. Hawaii Fidel, CBC News, Toronto.
The City of Toronto's budget officer is raising concerns over the province's cuts to Toronto Public Health. The Ford government has said it will cut funding to Toronto Public Health by $1 billion over a decade in an effort to consolidate local public health units across the province. The city's budget officer, Gary Crawford, says the cuts will affect the already established city budget.
There's no ability for us to go back and to find any kind of money with the kind of work we've been doing over the last 5 years and last year. We look for every dollar, and to be able to suggest that we can go back and find some money actually is not acceptable from my perspective.
Crawford says while the province has the right to make budget decisions, they should keep the city informed. He is hoping the city can have discussions with the province to talk about these cuts moving forward.
I just don't understand, the magnitude of these cuts and the fact that Toronto is being singled out for more discriminatory treatment. In other words, harsher cuts than anywhere else in the province. Why would that be? It's just beyond me.
Mayor John Tory says he is taking action to support Toronto Public Health. He says he has written to the province to request a meeting to discuss the decision and to argue the cut in funding won't be beneficial. For the province's part, they've said they are confident Toronto will be able to deliver public health services with greater efficiencies and have been engaging in many productive discussions with the city. Well, if you're heading into downtown tonight from the East End, be sure to give yourself some extra time. Trains are not running between Victoria Park and Kennedy due to track maintenance. Shuttle buses will be running instead.
No messing around here. Time to advance. Splash. In transition off that turnover.
Well, you might be coming in to cheer on the Raptors. The team is heading into the second round of the playoffs, this time against the Philadelphia 76ers. They won the first round against the Magic and are hoping to do away with Philly just the same. Tip-off is at 7:30 tonight at Scotiabank Arena. Blue Jays fans downtown today got quite the scare when Toronto police had to remotely detonate a suitcase that was left unattended in the lobby of a hotel connected to the Rogers Centre. Police say the unattended suitcase was found at the Marriott City Centre Hotel. Toronto Police's explosives team was on hand to detonate the suitcase. They say that does not mean there were explosives in the suitcase, but it was a way to dispose of it safely. The Blue Jays game went on as scheduled. People desperately trying to piece together what's left after a cyclone devastates regions in Mozambique. We'll take you there after the break. developing story out of California this evening. Police say a man is in custody after a fatal shooting at a synagogue outside San Diego. Officials say 4 people were sent to hospital. 1 person has died, but the extent of the other people's injuries has not been released. The synagogue was celebrating the last day of Passover. 5 people are now confirmed dead and 2 million in need of help as Cyclone Kenneth churns over Mozambique. Homes were flattened along the coast with communications in shambles. The extent of the damage remains unclear. And as the storm moves inland, 2 major rivers could burst their banks. Soil is already saturated in the wake of last month's Cyclone Idai. Officials are telling people to flee low-lying regions. To New England now, where what was once a major polluter has been erased from the landscape. 2 giant cooling towers, once part of a coal-fired power plant, are no more. The plant opened in 1963. The demolition took mere seconds. The push for cleaner energy forced its closure 2 years ago. A wind farm is now planned for the site. At least 3 suspects in last week's Sri Lanka bombings have been killed in a gun battle with government troops. It happened not far from one of the places hit in Sunday's attacks. Susan Ormiston is following this story from the capital city of Colombo.
In the east part of the country, overnight Friday, a massive security operation. Police tipped off the army to a suspected safe house, and when soldiers moved in, extremists set off 3 explosions. There was a gunfight and 15 people were killed, including reportedly 6 children. Soldiers say they found a cache of explosives, ISIS uniforms, they say, and a flag that may have been used in the video released by the terror group earlier this week. Meanwhile, a major cleanup operation is underway here at St. Anthony's Catholic Church in Colombo. The government has recruited the Army and the Navy to help cart out debris. They're protecting religious statues. They're inside washing walls and the floor. But the church won't reopen tomorrow. None of the Catholic churches in this country will. The Archbishop says it's simply too risky. He says church officials have seen a security document which described churches as a target, so he'll offer a televised mass instead. Here in Colombo, signs of resuscitation. People are back in the streets after nearly deserted streets yesterday. Shops are open. Seemingly, they are beginning to shrug off the worst of the terror and fear of other attacks. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Colombo.
To Victoria, British Columbia now, and a rescue operation to help get a cougar out of a tree. Conservation officers and police tracked the animal with the help of a police dog and a tranquilizer dart, which helped keep the cougar in good shape. It is being released well outside of the city. That's a live look at the Toronto Harbour front tonight. A blustery day in the city today. Sophia will be back with your long-range forecast after the break. Stay with us. Thousands of Christian worshippers are celebrating Easter's Holy Fire ceremony in Jerusalem. People packed into an ancient church believed to be built on the site of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. The Holy Fire is considered a miracle that occurs every year on the Saturday before Orthodox Easter Sunday. At exactly 2 p.m. local time, a sunbeam shines through a window in the church's ceiling and is thought to light a lamp placed in a tomb. Toronto is hosting the 26th annual Hot Docs International Documentary Festival. This year, more than 200 films are featured, so there is something for everyone, from the global housing crisis to preteens who like to perform in drag. Yelena Adzik has the details.
Already, this year has been monumental in terms of documentaries making a real impact. You think of R. Kelly or Michael Jackson, and those ones really spurred on investigations and conversations. And that is the kind of culture-shifting power that's on offer over the 10 days of the Hot Docs Festival. And, you know, this weekend, the focus is on big personalities as well as big, important social issues, like toxic beauty. This is a doc that focuses on the ugly side of the cosmetics industry. We spoke with the director, but first, here's a look at the film.
This cosmetics issue is even bigger than the tobacco industry because we're talking about thousands of different chemicals.
One of the most profound moments we had was we visited a woman by the name of Mel Linka in Tampa, and she's my age, and we both had used baby powder for our lives. I used it when I was a young person, and she had, you know, six weeks to live.
Now, beyond the docs that shine a light on injustice, there are those that illuminate on the lives of legends, like Gordon Lightfoot, If You Could Read My Mind.
People who wrote really very pretty music, but there were very smart lyrics woven into that. You know, there was some poetry here. This is a guy that sang poems.
Now, in total, there are more than 230 films on offer, and the good news is that with the voracious appetite for documentaries, as well as the increase in streaming services offering them, it really does seem like a lot of the ones showing here will be able to be seen right across the country, coming very soon. From the Hot Docs Festival, I'm Yelena Adzik for CBC News, Toronto. I'm going to get in line.
Time to check in with Sophia now for the long-range forecast. So, below seasonal temperatures, are we in for the long haul on these?
Yeah, we welcome May with more of the same. Yeah, it's kind of a gloomy week, bouts of rain and showers, and about 5 to 10 degrees below seasonal for really the entire long-range forecast. Last week fared a little bit better. We're already about 5 degrees seasonal right now. Wanted to quickly throw this up since we talked about flooding quite a bit earlier, especially throughout cottage country. Stay away from any of those flowing rivers and creeks. And for those of you in the Ottawa region, we mentioned how this year we're due to exceed some of the flooding levels that were seen during the historic year in 2017. This was also the year, may I remind you, that Toronto Island flooded. And the little news you can use here is that when Lake Ontario drains by even just a centimeter, the other rivers like Ottawa and the St. Lawrence, they rise by about 10 centimeters. So due to worsen over the coming days. The good news, though, in the long-range forecast for the flooded areas, next rain not until midweek, and the next system that comes overnight tonight will really be only a story for those of you in southern and southwestern Ontario, but it does involve a little bit of snow. Yes, the flakes will fly throughout the overnight period in the traditional snowbelt regions. You might even see a flake or two in the Hamilton and Niagara region up on the escarpment. It won't stick on the ground, but it's indicative of this cooler weather that we really have sticking with us for the long haul. You might see some sunshine on Sunday, though, the good news.
All right, thanks, Sophia.
You're welcome.
And that's our show for you tonight. Before we go, though, a quick look at fans lining up outside Jurassic Park for Game 1 of the Raptors 76ers playoff battle. Is it too early? Dare we dream of a championship? Oh, go ahead. Let's dream. Enjoy the night, everyone.